No matter your thoughts on the matter, tribalism is alive and well in pro wrestling fandom. You have your WWE lifers who don't believe in any other form of wrestling, your AEW hardcore who pine for something different from the norm, and Puro experts like Jack the Jobber who don't think wrestling's good unless someone lands on their neck 100 times and has Dave Meltzer hot under the collar. Tribalism reached its loudest in the 90s as the second modern pro wrestling boom took over the world. You had your WWE Attitude Obsessives, your WCW diehards, and the absolute lunatics who loved ECW. Of course, there were also the more rational lot who simply enjoyed all three. It's okay to enjoy multiple things, people. One of the most exciting things about the Monday Night Wars was you never knew who was going to turn up where. Roster jumps were inevitable, and due to the high profile of wrestling at the time, any jumpers were pretty likely to bring their successful gimmicks with them and potentially a bunch of fans from one promotion to another. But out of all the wrestlers who did time in WWE, WCW, and ECW, who held gold in all three? Let's find out. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is 10 wrestlers who held titles in ECW, WCW, and WWE. Join us. Okay, hold up. Before anyone kicks off in the comments, titles won when WCW and ECW were under WWE ownership do not count. So no Dudleys and no Big Show. On with the list. Number 10, Chris Candido. Bursting onto the scene at just 14 years old, Chris Candido was a sensation in the American Northeast. Holding the ECW tag titles twice before moving on to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, Candido became the youngest ever NWA World Champion at just 22 years old. Young, jacked, good in the ring, Candido's ceiling was very high, and WWE soon came a knockin'. However, upon landing in the Fed, Candido was saddled with the lame body donners gimmick alongside longtime valet/girlfriend Tammy Sitch and Tom Pritchard. Losing to King of the Ring jobbers Barry Horowitz and allegedly held down by Shawn Michaels, Candido's WWE run wasn't great, but still bore a WWE tag title reign. Candido soon returned to ECW. His work as part of the Triple Threat put him in a prominent position, and his top rope powerbomb, the Blonde Bombshell, was as awe-inspiring as it is terrifying. He became a tag team champion there with Lance Storm. But ECW was bleeding money, so Candido jumped to WCW for 15 minutes and a cup of coffee, somehow landing the Cruiserweight title despite being the size of a muscly bus. Bear in mind, he did all this by age 28, which is seriously impressive however you care to look at it. Unfortunately, Candido passed away just a few years later at the age of 33. Number 9, Perry Saturn. The most underrated member of the Radicals, Perry Saturn had a long and storied career, punctuated by martial arts kicks before they were in vogue, strange character development, and even weirder fashion choices. Saturn was never the main man, and usually played second fiddle to whomever he was in a faction with, which is a shame because in ring he was really, really good. Okay, so maybe he was the biggest star out of the Eliminators, but that wasn't exactly hard. It was as a part of the Eliminators with John Cronus that Saturn first came to prominence, winning the ECW tag team titles 3 times and being a featured part of the ECW invasion of Raw in 1997. Saturn's best run was his post-ECW spell in WCW, first as the brutish enforcer for Raven's Flock where he picked up the TV title, then later as a dress-wearing Marilyn Manson wannabe who Death Valley drivered everyone and everything and won the tag straps. Like buddy Dean Malenko, when Saturn made the jump to WWE as part of the Radicals, he wasn't so effectively utilized. He did manage runs with the Hardcore and European titles, but was severely de-pushed after attacking a jobber and fell in love with a mop. Number 8, Dean Malenko. Dean Malenko is one of the greatest in-ring technicians of the last 30 years. No matter his opponent, Malenko would produce magic, often blurring the line between pro wrestling and combat sports. A second-generation superstar, Malenko was born into the business and tagged across Mexico and Japan with Brother Joe in the late 80s. It wasn't until Dean went solo that he started making a splash on the American scene and became one of Paul Heyman's prized assets as ECW showed that they were capable of more than just hardcore wrestling. His His matches with Eddie Guerrero over the ECW TV title garnered worldwide acclaim, and soon Eric Bischoff acquired the two and Malenko's tag partner Chris Benoit to WCW. WCW saw Malenko reach his greatest heights, sitting as one of the linchpins of the generation-defining cruiserweight division. His feud with Chris Jericho, in particular, was incredible. Check out the Cruiserweight Battle Royal at Slamboree 98 if you haven't seen it. By the time Malenko got to WWE in 2000, he'd won practically every title in ECW and WCW, but was also 40 years old with one eye on retirement. However, Malenko still managed 2 runs with the WWE Light Heavyweight title before settling into a backstage role. Number 7, Lance Storm. If I can be serious for a moment, it's time to talk about Calgary, Alberta, Canada's second favourite buzzcut sporting son. Following in the footsteps of former tag partner Chris Jericho, Lance Storm made the progression from ECW to WCW to WWE, becoming known for his crisp offense and having the face of a man who'd just been told his car was being towed. Storm's run in ECW was his career best, but despite putting on countless match of the night contenders, he never won any singles titles, instead holding tag gold with Chris Candido and with Just Incredible as the Impact players. After one too many of Paul Heyman's bounce checks, Storm went to WCW where he was solidly pushed and quickly landed the US, Cruiserweight and Hardcore titles. The only wrestler in WCW history to hold 3 WCW championships at once. As a proud Canadian, he renamed all 3 in honor of his home. The US title became the Canadian Heavyweight title, the Cruiserweight title became the 100 kilos and under title, and the Hardcore title became the Saskatchewan Hardcore International title. Storm joined WWE as part of the Alliance and later won Intercontinental and Tag Gold. Didn't rename any of them though, his cold heart clearly wasn't in it. Number 6, Terry Funk. Middle-aged and crazy from the Double Cross Ranch in Amarillo, Texas, Terry Funk is one of the most well-respected names in wrestling history. Old school until the day he actually properly retires, Funk never stayed in one company for too long, and is one of only 4 people to have held titles in ECW, WCW, WWE, and to have won the NWA World title. A pioneer of hardcore wrestling, Funk served as the burgeoning ECW symbol of legitimacy, his barbed wire-strewn battles helping bring eyes to Paul Heyman's boundary-pushing product, winning the ECW World title on 2 occasions. Soon, Funk retired, then came out of retirement, obviously, for a WWE run as Chainsaw Charlie, winning Tag Gold with Cactus Jack, then buggering off and retiring again. Funk came out of retirement, obviously, retired again, then returned to WCW in 2000 for the first time since 1994. Funk won the Hardcore title 3 times, and the US title for a second time after a brief run with it in 1975. After WCW, Funk toured the Indies, retired and unretired 50 times, obviously, made his way back to WWE for ECW One Night Stand 2, then retired again. While I've been recording this, Terry Funk has actually unretired and retired a further 3 times. Number 5, Cactus Jack. Mick Foley has had as many alter egos as he has career-threatening injuries, but although Mankind made him a household name, Cactus Jack is the persona with arguably the greatest legacy. A prominent face on WCW television in the early 90s, Cactus was, for a spell, one of the promotion's top heels, battling Sting before moving on to a brutal feud with Vader. Despite giving WCW his all and losing an ear in the process, Cactus only managed to capture 1 title, the tag team titles with Kevin Sullivan. Jack then appeared in ECW as part of a talent exchange with WCW, spit on his WCW tag belt, and embarked on one of the greatest runs of his career. Despite the power of the Kane Dewey promo and the anti-hardcore storyline, Cactus didn't win any singles gold in ECW, instead winning the tag titles with Mikey Whipwreck. When Foley jumped ship to WWE in 1996, he gained his greatest exposure as Mankind. As Mankind, Foley won everything from the tag titles, the newly created Hardcore title, and the WWE title 3 times. But Cactus Jack was unleashed from time to time and managed, you guessed it, a tag title run with Chainsaw Charlie for a brief spell in 1998. Number 4, Shane Douglas. Shane Douglas is something of an underrated commodity. His work in ring was always good, his work on the mic even better. But through a mixture of burning every bridge he ever crossed and being overshadowed by ECW alumni like RVD, Taz and Tommy Dreamer, his importance to 90s wrestling is often overlooked. Still, the franchise got his hands on championships wherever he went, and was the first man to hold gold in the Big 3 of American wrestling when he picked up the WWE Intercontinental title for 10 seconds in 1995. 5. Remember kids, don't piss off the clique. His biggest successes were in ECW, from throwing down the NWA title to having the longest combined reigns of the ECW World title. The company was built around Douglas and his give no F's attitude. Shane's second run in WCW was good too, despite the writing being on the wall for Ted Turner's wrestling behemoth. Although his first run in the early 90s saw him win the WCW and NWA tag titles, he was a bit generic to say the least, and it wasn't until he returned as the franchise in 1999 that he could finally sink his teeth into the mid-card, winning the US title as well as having another tag title run. Number 3, Eddie Guerrero. What is there to say about Eddie Guerrero that hasn't already been said? A career filled with triumph, struggle, and redemption made Eddie legions of fans, and his in-ring work was up there with the best. Whether involved in comedic storylines, blood feuds, or just putting on excellent matches with ease, Eddie's career was strewn with gold, but it was a long time before wrestling promoters truly realized what he was capable of. Paul Heyman had an inkling, promoting an Eddie vs Malenko feud in ECW over the TV title, but as soon as Eddie arrived in Philly, he was off to Atlanta and WCW. Eddie's WCW career started slowly, but a 3-month reign with the US title in '97 really allowed him to showcase his ability. He later moved on to the Cruiserweight division and won its title, but couldn't quite break through that darned glass ceiling. The same seemed true for his WWE career, promising displays, fan support, a handful of mid-card titles, but no real progression. Eddie would go on to be released in 2001 due to a DUI, but returned in 2002. And this time, there was no stopping him, and after several tag title runs, Eddie landed the big one, defeating WWE champion Brock Lesnar at No Way Out 2004. Number 2, Raven. One of the most enigmatic characters in wrestling history, Raven became the figure who defined ECW as the brand was gaining prominence. Nihilistic, violent, blasphemous, Raven was a mixture of Jake the Snake Roberts, Edgar Allan Poe, and Alice in Chains, and built an army of rabid fans and followers everywhere he went. ECW was Raven's bread and butter, where he became a 2-time ECW champion and 4-time tag champion. When he jumped ship to WCW, many were surprised at how well he was pushed, sitting ringside with his flock and frowning a lot. The gimmick was, for its time, unique, and as Raven's popularity grew, so did his spot, beating DDP for the US title and then losing it to Goldberg a day later. Undeterred, Raven went on to hold the tag titles with Saturn, popped back to ECW for a couple of tag title runs there, and then made his way to WWE. Allegedly, Vince McMahon said, "Who the hell rehired Johnny Polo?" when Raven returned, and the miserable metalhead was inserted into the hardcore title scene, winning the broken strap some 27 times. Ludicrous. Like Shane Douglas, Chris Candido, and Terry Funk before him, Raven is also a former NWA champion, having won the title while working for TNA. Number 1, Chris Jericho. The man of 1004 holds, the Ayatollah of rock and roller, Le Champion! Chris Jericho has seen it all and done it all, and has a list of championships as long as his list of holds. After building a reputation in Japan and Mexico, Jericho stopped by ECW for a brief spell, won the TV title, dropped it, and sauntered off to WCW. It was in WCW that the character of Chris Jericho started to emerge, with his pompous rock star cum conspiracy victim at the heart of the Cruiserweight division. Many believed it was only a matter of time before Jericho would move up the card to bigger and better things, but WCW was the land of the old lads, so Jericho packed his bags and headed for WWE. After a shaky start, Jericho got over like Rover and went on an absolute tear across several stints with the WWE, winning 26 titles. Jericho has the distinction of being the first ever undisputed WWE champion, the 4th Grand Slam champion, 9th Triple Crown champion, and record-setting Intercontinental champion. Jericho is also the only wrestler in history to have held gold in ECW, WCW, WWE, New Japan, and AEW. Have a day off, mate.